Hi, everyone. My name is Brielle Jaekel. I am the editor in chief of FreightWaves here, and I am talking to Jason Massey today with Ndustrial. And today we're talking about a really interesting topic. It's really niche, I would say, but I think it's going to be a big thing for the future and even now. But we are talking about decarbonizing the cold chain by addressing energy intensity. And Jason Massey is the co-founder and CEO of Ndustrial. Take it away, Jason. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and the company.
Thanks, Brielle. I appreciate you guys having me. So Jason Massey, I'm one of the co-founders of Ndustrial. Had spent my previous life in venture capital in Silicon Valley before moving home to North Carolina to start what is now Ndustrial, and had worked really closely with manufacturing sites on energy efficiency and just doing those physical upgrades to their sites like lighting, HVAC. We developed some renewable projects, and just over time, our customers kept asking to prove the energy savings to them, and to disaggregate that from their manufacturing or production processes. So, right, when you look at the widget being made, or in the case of cold chain, thousands of pounds of food being frozen, that really does drive the energy profile of that site, the kilowatt hours it's consuming, or the total demand, the kW that site's consuming. So that led us to build the software that we've built today, and we really focus on that energy intensity KPI, which is effectively kilowatt hours per whatever the unit of production is. And what seems like simple math, like a numerator and denominator division, getting that underlying data has proven to be pretty challenging and difficult at scale and in real time as well.
So I guess my first question I want to ask you is how is it that we are able to measure and track the energy intensity of cold chain operations?
Sure, it requires multiple systems coming together. We affectionately refer to our back end as context. So it's contextualizing a lot of completely different data sources that were never really intended to work together. And that can be, in the cold chain, a warehouse management system. That's where we find a lot of really useful and helpful kind of production based data. And then the refrigeration control systems, a lot of times those are legacy systems that were really never intended to be cloud enabled, or they're really hard to extract data from them. And then obviously the energy system. So tracking from smart meters to additional sensors, and then even pulling in data from the energy markets. So energy prices, as you know, fluctuate rapidly in markets like Texas and California. How do you bring that all together into one cohesive set of data points? And that's what we do with that backend platform.
So speaking of data points, what kind of metrics or KPIs do you think are more effective in really assessing this energy efficiency?
Yeah, it's interesting. We do work with facilities outside of cold chain and like textiles and other markets, and I think the oftentimes people want to try to find that one killer KPI, the one metric that allows them to benchmark across their own sites and other sites. And the reality is we often find a triangulation. It ends up being, 2 to 3 KPIs that you're kind of watching the relationship to. In the cold chain, COP, coefficient of performance, is a really important KPI. We would tell you that that's necessary but not sufficient, and that you need other data in there, such as the production, the blast freezing, the products going in and out, to understand the relationship between production, the work that's being done, and the thermal energy and thermal effort that's going on in that facility. So COP is really important for cold chain, but then you want to offset that and look at other types of KPIs that are tangential to that.
Right. I feel like metrics across the board in any industry are something that's so difficult. I mean, I went to school for broadcasting, and ratings have
Yeah.
been the biggest discussion in the industry for
What?
years. And
Yeah.
I just find it so funny that we're still having this problem in every industry.
It feels like a lot of times that perfect is the enemy of good, right? There is data out there. You can get it. You may not find perfect correlation, but we think you can get really, really close with that. But you just got to start with something. You just have to start looking at the data and not wait for it to be perfect. And a lot of times this is just additional instrumentation. You don't need to do very complex algorithmic based inference of what COP is or what some of these other KPIs could be. You just need to do better instrumentation, right? Put some additional sensors in, put some additional flow meters in, and then that data is available to you. And you can do that from a primary source, first principles way.
So on a sensors, hardware kind of standpoint, or not even just hardware, but what emerging technologies or new innovations do you really see as having the greatest potential in the future to really reduce energy intensity of cold chain operations?
We're data geeks, and so we do think that just when we've gotten into fleet electrification and the TRUs, that really was more of a function of data models and data relationships versus any particular piece of new hardware or plug-in infrastructure at the loading docks. And so we still feel like there's a lot to be done at the data layer in terms of organizing it, normalizing it. And this is where AI in its broadest sense and machine learning is being useful in this space and not just a shiny object that people are chasing. It can help you, especially when you're talking about we're doing 200 million data points a day across and sub 15-second latency, and so you need models, you need additional technology to process and find the context and relationship between all those data points. So this is where AI and machine learning is starting to add a lot of value.
Well, I do know everyone has this problem as well, but how is it possible to really evaluate the trade-offs between energy efficiency and factors like costs and reliability? I mean, I'm the kind of person that thinks that we should be focusing on this above cost, and I really feel like a lot of companies have obvious major companies across the world have focused on their bottom line and making as much profit as possible at the cost of the planet's health is what I believe. But yeah, so how do you feel that that people are working on balancing this?
Yeah, so I mean, this is in the DNA of our business when we started it back in 2011. Is we think that these things aren't mutually exclusive in the sense that you can drive greater profitability, be more efficient. And so that trade-off between energy efficiency, right? The most non-carbon spewing site is a site that's not operating, right? You just turn it off. But at the end of the day, these facilities exist to do something: blast freeze food, store food, move food around. And so that's why that energy intensity metric is really important. The other thing I'd say is this kind of gets into the financial wonky part of this equation is we've always seen energy and say your utility bill at these sites, which are often seen as just necessary evil expenses on your P&L. It's just, I pay rent, I pay my power bill, right? I've got labor and I got these other things in there. But if you think of that relationship of energy to your production, energy is actually a cost of goods sold, right? It's an incremental cost per widget made, per 1,000 pounds of food frozen. So when CFOs start thinking of energy as a cost of goods sold versus just another line item in their operational expenses, that does change their calculus on caring about it more. That in of itself, if you can have a lower energy intensive operation, you are going to have a larger profit margin in your operation.
I agree with you. Well, it's a fact. What are some pitfalls you think that we need to look out for when it comes to decarbonizing the cold chain?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I just talked about the benefit and the promise of AI and machine learning, but I think sometimes people are looking for a silver bullet with that technology to solve that, and so we want to be careful not to overhype that, but give it its proper. It's just another tool in the toolbox to do things. And then I think the other challenge oftentimes is it's easy to get the first 20%. It's really hard to get the next 5, 10, and even the next 20% of energy efficiency or energy intensity reductions. And so it's really, really important to do the measurement and verification to help the decision makers prove that these things are actually working and that they'll invest more and more money into those projects. And so we've seen kind of a cheat that you'll see in the marketplace is we do believe that there's a place for carbon credits in the marketplace, but a lot of times people just rush to purchase carbon credits to try to accelerate their path to net zero. In reality, you need to do the harder things, do the things inside of your facility, work on the transportation side of the equation, the emissions that are happening there, upgrade your refrigeration systems to the next generation systems, come off of HFCs and get into a more natural refrigerant. Those are all the things that tend to be capital intensive, but really move the needle in the short term and the long term. And that's just if you're going to spend tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to these upgrades, you better feel really confident that you're measuring the savings and seeing what the outputs of that really are.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Well, that's all the questions I have for today. Do you have any other insights that you would like to add before we go?
No, other than we never thought we would be getting into the fleet electrification world, but this third party logistics space has really opened that up. And this is largely because of data models. We see tremendous emission reductions by turning off those idling diesel TRUs while they're at the loading dock and just running those off kilowatt hours. That was a happy accident discovery for us in our company and something that we've gotten really excited about in terms of our ability to influence carbon emissions reduction in 3PL cold chain.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming on with me today. And you guys stay tuned for the next session for today's summit.